Hello and welcome to another event in our Tech Talk series. Today we will be covering the Chatter Developer Preview. As you know, Salesforce.com is a publicly traded company, and therefore we do need to share this safe harbor statement with you to let you know that any forward-looking statements are just that, forward-looking statements. If you have any questions, you can visit our investor relations section on our website. Also, we would like you to know that this webinar will be recorded and distributed to all attendees via email after the event. So with that, I'd like to introduce Dave Carroll.
Thanks a lot, Sheridan. And I just want to welcome everybody on the webinar here today to our Developer Preview webinar. And what we're going to be doing today is talking to you about a new program that we're launching through our developer marketing organization called the Chatter Developer Preview. And I know some of you that are on the call probably have heard of Chatter, and some of you may not. And so what we'll do is we'll just start with a quick description of what Chatter is and where it lies in the Salesforce.com ecosystem. So Chatter is an application that we're providing to our customers to allow collaboration in the cloud using social networking technologies applied to the enterprise data application space like you've never seen before. In addition to our Sales Cloud, and Service Cloud, and Custom Cloud, we're introducing the Chatter Collaboration Cloud. And what this does is really allows you to bring your data to you using technologies that you're familiar with on the consumer web. And what we're going to focus on in particular, though, is the fact that Chatter is also a new part of the platform, the Force.com platform. So in addition to our logic as a service and our UI as a service, our APIs, web service APIs, we're also creating Chatter as a service that you can use when building applications on the platform. You can not only use it building applications, but you can use it for any kind of customizations that you do on Salesforce.com. And so the Chatter functionality is available automatically for you. We're going to turn this on when it's GA for every user in your organization, and you'll be able to take advantage of it immediately. So just a little bit about what else is being said about Chatter. Chatter's raised a lot of buzz around the blogosphere, and it's completely natural because it is a social networking type of technology that we're talking about here. And what you can see from most of these quotes is that there is a lot of energy and a lot of excitement around Chatter. I would like to point you to www.embracingthecloud.com. This is a nice blog post by one of our ecosystem developers, Mike Leach, where he explains his experience using Chatter for the first time. So go ahead and take a look at that. Now, what I'd like to do is give you the opportunity to understand a little bit more about Chatter. And to do that, I want to turn it over to John Dismore, who's going to give you a little bit more detail about how Chatter actually works.
Thanks, Dave. So before we jump into the application, what I'd like to do is just give you an overview of the major capabilities that you're going to get when Salesforce Chatter is enabled. First off, we've got an enhanced identity for all of the users in the system with the new user profile page and the user feed on that page. Secondly, we've made it easy for you to find and connect with other users in the system with the new people page and people search. Thirdly, we provide you with a way to view all of the conversations and all of the activity related to a specific record using the record feed on the record detail page. And lastly, we provide you with a single place to go and see all of the activity related to all of the users and people that you're following with the news feed on the home page. With that said, let's actually jump into the app and take a look at Chatter in action. So one of the first things that you'll notice is the new look and feel of the Salesforce UI. Salesforce Chatter is actually only available in the new UI. And to get started, what I'd like to do is to take a look at the new user profile page. And in this org, I'm logged in as Madison Rigsby, who's a sales user. I can navigate to my user profile using this link in the header. And as you can see, the user profile page really gives users a rich identity inside the application. They can customize it by adding their picture, adding some additional information on their background, their expertise, and some info on the best way to contact them. The other thing that you'll notice on the user profile page is the user feed. The user feed contains all of my activity throughout the system, as well as any conversations which I've engaged in. And if I want to let people know what I'm up to, I can provide a status update from using the publisher at the top of my user feed. Once I've set up my user profile, one of the first things that I'll want to do is to connect with the people that I work with, and to be able to do that, to help you do that, we implemented the people page and people search. So, for example, if I was looking to connect with a colleague, Nancy Smith, I can just type in her name, and there you can see a link to her user profile. So if I wanted to go and find out some more information about Nancy, I could click through to her user profile, or I could just choose to follow her directly from the list view. In addition to helping you connect with people, Chatter also helps you connect with your data. So let's take a look at what a Salesforce record looks like after Chatter has been enabled in your org. If I click through to this opportunity here.
An opportunity, John, is just a data object. Happens to support the SFA process, but it's just an object of data.
Exactly. So what you're going to see here is pretty much what you'll see on most standard objects within Salesforce, as well as custom objects,
Great.
So one of the first things you'll see here is how the user profile is actually being used to push out the user's identity throughout the application. So if you take a look here next to the Opportunity Owner field, you'll see there's a small thumbnail image, and when I mouse over Nancy's name here, I get a pop-up with a mini profile which contains a picture, some basic contact information, and her latest status update. The other thing that you'll notice on the record detail page here is the Show Chatter button here at the top. And when I click on that, that will expand the record feed for this particular opportunity. So the record feed contains all of the activity and all of the conversation related to the record. And it can be used by any member of the deal team to quickly come up to speed with exactly what's happening on this particular opportunity. You'll notice when you take a look at the feed that there are a couple of different types of updates in this feed. At the top here, we have an update due to a track change. What happened here is Madison changed the stage of the opportunity, and when she saved that change, this update was automatically posted to the feed. Further down in the feed, you can see an example of how users can post messages directly to the record feed. Here, Madison asked a question of the deal team, and then they were able to respond using comments. She asked that question by posting an update using the publisher at the top of the feed. And when you create these updates and post these messages to the feed, you have the option of attaching a file or attaching a link to those updates. Now, this is all well and good. It gives you a nice, easy way to get up to speed with all of the activity on this opportunity. But typically, users are working on more than one record at any given time. So the idea that we implemented here was that you could follow records, just as you can follow users, using this simple button at the top of the record feed. When I click that follow button, I'm now following this record. It's similar to the notion of following users, and basically what it does is it consolidates all of the activity and conversation related to any user that I'm following, any record that I'm following, and displays it in my news feed, which is available on the home page. As you can see, we've got this Show Chatter, and when I expand that, that'll show you my news feed. And in that news feed, you can see that there's a variety of updates there, some of which come from the fact that I'm following users, like in this case, I'm following Jeff Frist, and others due to the fact that I'm following records. So, for example, here I'm following this Highlands Media opportunity. Another thing that we implemented with Chatter was the ability to get email notifications based on certain events. So here under the setup tree, under My Chatter settings, My Chatter emails, you'll see that there's a variety of events which end users can configure based on their own personal preferences to decide when they receive email notifications. So for example, you can receive an email notification when someone follows you or posts on your profile. Now, one thing that you should consider when you start using Chatter is who gets to see the updates that you post there. There's some pretty simple rules as to who gets to see what. If you post to your user feed from the home page, or if you post to another user's feed via the user profile page, those will be visible to all other users in the system. If, however, you post to a record feed, only users with access to that record, based on the current Salesforce security model, will be able to see that update. So, as an admin, how do you get started with Chatter in your org? Once Chatter is enabled, the first time a system admin logs into your org, they'll receive this pop-up message, which has a button on it which will take them to the Chatter settings page. And once they've enabled Chatter for the org, all standard users will see the Chatter application, will have Chatter enabled, and will see the Salesforce Chatter application in the application dropdown. The next thing that you'll probably want to do as an admin is to configure your Chatter feeds. Basically, you can decide which of the standard objects and which of the custom objects are enabled for feeds, and which fields on those records are tracked. Basically, by tracking a field, that means if that field is updated, it will automatically post an update to the record feed. And as I said earlier, we support pretty much most of the standard objects within Salesforce and all custom objects. While all users will get the Salesforce Chatter application in the application dropdown, we recommend that you add the people and profile tabs to your most popular apps, which will make it much easier for your users to discover the Chatter application. Last but not least is enabling Chatter for mobile. The Chatter application is available in both Mobile Lite as well as Salesforce Mobile. In the case of Mobile Lite, all you need to do is enable Mobile Lite under the mobile settings. And for the full Salesforce mobile app, what you need to do is to to basically mobilize the newsfeed object, and then it'll be available to all of your mobile users. With that, I'd like to hand you back to Dave for an overview of development with Chatter.
Yeah, thanks a lot, John. Hopefully you guys can see that Chatter really adds a unique functionality to the applications that you build on theforce.com. It's all about notifications. It's all about collaborating with people, understanding what's happening with your data, as well as what's going on with your teams. And the fact that it's built directly into the platform means that it's as simple to configure and to implement as point and click. But as we know, there's a lot of other development capabilities on the platform as well. We've got our Apex code for our programmable logic. We've got our programmable UI with Visual Force. We have the ability to trigger on objects and have the system do our business process and our business logic in that way. And so what I want to talk about for the rest of the time here is how you might access Chatter from a developer perspective. And when we're talking about Chatter, what we're talking about really from the developer perspective is feeds. And so these are the status updates that we see everywhere. The data model, that holds all the feeds, and in addition, the social graph, which tells us information about who's following what, how many feeds have been posted, how many statuses have been updated, who our most active posters are, and so on. Now, the good news is that you can take the skills that you've already acquired in developing on the Force.com platform and apply them to Chatter application development. So the techniques that you've learned using Apex code, using Visualforce, even using the Web Services API can be brought to bear when thinking about including Chatter in your custom application. So Apex code and Visualforce are pretty much the obvious places where you can leverage Chatter. But one thing that I wanted to emphasize is that in addition to that, we've got the Web Services API. So Chatter and the data model is exposed just like the other parts of the data model that you create for your Force.com application. That means that they're represented in a WSDL that you can download and generate a client from, or you can use directly from other tools like Flash Builder for Force.com, the Ajax toolkit, or anything that can create a SOAP message and consume a SOAP response. So let's go ahead and talk about these data objects. There's basically four types of objects, or three types of objects that we need to be concerned with when we're developing for Chatter. The first is the feed post, and this is the object that contains the contents of the post or the update. So when a user goes ahead and creates a post on somebody else's profile, that comment is contained, or that content is contained in the feed post. And we also have these three other things called newsfeed, user profile, and record feed. These are very similar yet slightly different. So the newsfeed contains all of the posts from people that are following that are following you. So not only following you, but records that you're following. This is slightly different than your user profile feed, which are posts that are created by you or where you are the direct topic of another post. And then on the right side, we see the list of standard objects that can contain a feed. Now, not all of these immediately start generating feeds. You need to enable them for Chatter and then select the fields that you want to have trigger updates. But these are the lists that are available to you. In addition, every custom object that you create to service your application have the capability of having feeds. And then finally, at the bottom, we have what we call subscriptions. These are represented by the entity subscription object. It basically has two fields of interest. One, the parent ID. This is what somebody is subscribed to. And then the subscriber ID indicates who the subscriber is. And so with those two pieces of information, you have actually a ton of access to the social graph. So you can do things like analyze who's following who's following what, and so on. So I think a better way to think about the data model is to think about this image right here. We've got the feed post on the left. Remember, that's the thing that contains the actual contents of the update. And then right in the middle, we've got this thing called entity feed. Now, this can be, again, an account feed, a custom object feed, a user feed, anything that is enableable through the Chatter setup UI. And then at the top, we have the record. This is the topic of the feed post, whether it's a user, whether it's a custom object. That points to the actual reference of the update. Now, off to the right, we've got two related lists of information. One is called feed tracked changes. So feed tracked changes contains the information that was changed. So for instance, on that opportunity object that John showed us earlier, there was a status update that said somebody changed this value on this record to this value. And that is contained in the feed tracked changes table. Then there's the feed comments, which is simply a child off the entity feed that contains all the comments that people have written for the feed. So how do we actually access this data? Well, using some of the techniques that were introduced in Spring 10, we can create SOCL statements to get our data. So this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. What is interesting, though, is that feed post by itself is not queryable. And so the way that we get the data for the feed post is through its relationship to the entity feed. And you can see that here in blue, where I'm getting my feedpost.id, .type, .body, and .title through that relationship. Let's go ahead and take a look at a little sample of this. What I'm going to do is show you a controller that I've got created just for this demo. And basically what's happening in this controller is I'm executing the SOCL statement that you saw on the previous page. It's simply going out to Newsfeed and pulling in all the information for me. So let's see what this looks like on a page. So I've got my SOCL 1 page. First what I want to do is show you the home page. This is our reference. And so this is what the standard home page looks like. You can see we've got some information there from, looks like Neil Young to Eric Clapton. And we'll go ahead and select our other page. And you can see we've got a very similar, albeit a little bit sparser, representation. So this is simply executing the SOCL statement in here and then rendering it for us. Likewise, we can do the same thing to get the profile page feed. So remember, the profile page is obtained on this link. And when I click there, I've got even a little bit different kind of feed showing here. And we'll see the same version done with my excellent coding skills, and very similar. So we've got a couple of things about the tour bus, and then we've got Neil Young wanting to talk to Eric. Finally, we can also do the account feed. Now what you'll notice about the account feed query statement, or what I'd like to point out, and the home page feed is it's entirely the same statement right up until the from. So if you look at that and then you look at this, those are exactly the same. The only thing that is changing here is where I'm getting the feed from and possibly what I'm using to filter the feed. So let's go ahead and take a look at what happens on that account feed. And now I see everything about the Tour Buses Are Us account that's been published to that particular account. There you go. This is the pretty way, and this is the Dave way. So pretty straightforward. One other thing that I'd like to show you is that we can also get interesting statistics about our feeds. So I have two more SOCL statements that I've created here, and they both use a new feature from Spring 10, which is aggregate functions. And the first one, I'm simply just getting the type of feed that's been posted and the number of feeds that have been posted for that kind of feed. On the bottom part, what I'm doing is I'm returning my most prolific posters. So I'm selecting the count of posts for each poster, limiting it to 10, and then displaying it on the page. So here's what that looks like. Very simple. I've got 8 tracked changes, 4 user status updates, 2 text posts, and so on. And likewise, Eric Clapton is my most prolific, with Jimi Hendrix coming in second. And just for completeness, let's go ahead and take a look at these pages. So the first page, very simple. I'm grabbing that home page feed and then just doing a repeat block, outputting the contents of the SOCL statement. So as we know, getting to the data is only half the story. The other half of the story is actually manipulating the data. And this is how we will be able to manipulate data with Chatter. It's, again, very similar to the way that you would do any other kind of data manipulation, regardless of object, whether it's a custom object, standard object, or these new Chatter objects. For instance, to create a feed post, I'll instantiate a new instance of feed post. I will set the parent ID, which basically says this is where or who I want to post this to, and then set the body of it. Let's go ahead and try that out. And what I'm going to do is just copy and paste this bit right here. Now I'll jump back over to my browser. And using the new system log in Spring 10, I'll paste that code in there. Before I run that, let's go ahead and go back to Eric Clapton's profile and make sure that there's nothing up my sleeve. Go ahead and execute this. Looks like it executed successfully. And then I'll go back to the profile and refresh the page. And voila, we've created a simple feed post. So pretty straightforward. I think this, really provides a ton of power. A very simple data model with a very easy way to get to the data and a very simple data manipulation scheme. So creating a comment, very similar to creating a feed post. In this case, the thing that I want to point out, which was a point of confusion for me initially, and so I don't want it to be for you, the feed item ID is not the post ID. Again, let's go back and look at our diagram. Our feed post that contains the status information is on the left, and it's hooked to the entity feed in the middle. That entity feed in the middle is the ID that we're using here. And so that matches the model. It looks like the diagram. And then we just set the contents of the comment body and call an insert function. So pretty straightforward. Now, I also mentioned the social graph and our ability to access and manipulate that. Subscriptions are queryable and they are creatable. The object name, the proper name for this is entity subscription. And we can do things like find out who is following me. We do that by selecting from the entity subscription and putting our user ID in for the parent ID. If we wanted to find out who was following an account, we would run the same query except replace the user ID with an account ID. So that means that parent ID is a polymorphic relationship field where the parent ID can reference either people or objects that you've created in the system. We can also find out who or what I'm following. So in this case, we swap parent ID for subscriber ID, and now I can find out who the people are that I've subscribed to. So there's lots of other things that you can do with this. Find out how many people are following a particular account. Find out who's following somebody and not following somebody else, and so on. So let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of demo applications that have been built. Of course, Chatter's been out for about 3 weeks now. And as you can imagine, it's a shiny new technology that our internal folks have been dying to get their hands on and wasted no time in creating some interesting applications. The first one that I want to show you today is Chatter Bubbles. And basically what this application is a different way of presenting the user profile. So it gives an alternate visualization of that profile page. It also demonstrates within the code itself the points at which you would want to think about when you're developing applications. So not only is it a nice looking way of looking at the profile page, but it's also a great sample. So if you want sample code on how to do just about anything, most of the recipes are in there. It also adds some functionality, so it adds the ability to bookmark or favorite a particular status update if you want to be able to quickly return to that status. Also allows a new concept called rechatting. So if you've ever been on Twitter and you see a great tweet, you can retweet the tweet, and this allows us to rechat the chatter. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Click on Chatter Bubbles. By the way, this was built by one of my colleagues, a fellow evangelist, Quentin Wall. And here we see, we can do a simple update. What you doing? We are on the air. So we'll just publish that. And then if we also come over and look at Eric Clapton, we can see a little mini profile for him. We can go ahead and add a comment here. This is round and approachable as an interface, so I'll go ahead and post that. Now what I'd like to do is come down, scroll down here, and I want to add this one to my favorites. So I'll go ahead and add that to my favorites. You can see I've got a little indication that it was successful. And let's go ahead and take a look at my favorites now. This is another Visualforce page. And so we can see that I've got my favorites shown here. One last thing that I want to show is the rechat. So we'll go ahead and let's rechat this one. All I have to do is click a button and it has been rechatted. The way that I can tell that is by going back to my home directory and see that I rechatted this, right? So very nice demonstration application that shows how to do many of the things that you're going to be wanting to do when you're developing for Chatter. Now the next demonstration that I'd like to do is called Chatter Directory. This is another sample application. All of these applications will be available to you to dissect the code, to leverage the code. Cut and paste is one of my favorite ways of developing, so we want to make that available for you as well. And this is a filterable directory and search box, right? So this is basically an alternate to, I think, our people page. So in this case, if I'm looking for followable items, in other words, items that are Chatter enabled, I can do that. I can quickly filter out the users by unselecting them in this box, and now I only see objects that I'm following. I can even do specific objects, like maybe I only want to see accounts, for instance. But if I go ahead and put all these back in, the other powerful thing we can do here is to go ahead and type in a search term. So I'll search for Grace, and there's Grace Slick. Maybe I want tour to find my tour buses. And so a nice demonstration of searching for things that are Chatter enabled versus just searching on their own. So that's just a couple of the demonstrations that are available so far. I think one thing that I'll do is show you one more demonstration. This is around the area of visualization and the social graph. And so this simple Chatter user dashboard shows information that is garnered from the graph. So, who are my 10 top users? Again, we saw the query for that earlier. Status updates by day, most active this week, and so on. So hopefully that will give you some idea of some of the things that you can do. Certainly we haven't thought of everything that would be useful using Chatter, and we really look to you guys to really do the innovation with this technology on the platform. And how we're going to enable you to do that? Well, that's what this webinar is all about, actually, the developer preview for Chatter. And so the developer preview starts today. Everybody who is on this webinar will be receiving 2 emails within the next few hours. One email is going to contain a login for a brand new developer edition for yourself. And so this will be the environment that has Chatter enabled prior to becoming generally available that you can begin experimenting around with. The second email that you're going to receive is one for the Chatter Dev Zone. The Chatter Dev Zone is a new experiment that we're trying. What we've done is we've created a very large instance of Salesforce.com, and everybody on the webinar has been invited to participate in this instance. And so I'll be in there doing chatters, as will the other developer evangelists. We'll be using this to exchange ideas, to get feedback, also to showcase any kind of apps and innovation that you might have. So we'll be taking submissions over time for apps to be added to the Chatter Dev Zone. I think that this is going to be actually really fun and exciting program that we've started here. Now, for feedback on the developer preview, use the Chatter discussion boards on developer.force.com, and also we have an ideas site for Chatter specifically that you can use to provide additional feedback back to our product management team. So follow the 3 must-dos that are shown on the screen, and you can also begin getting started with a wiki article that we've published today at developer.force.com/chatter. Finally, it wouldn't be Salesforce Developer without a contest. And so we are going to be running a contest for the length of the developer preview. The details are yet to be fully defined, but you can be assured that we're going to have some nice prizes and also allow you to build up your reputation on developer.force.com. So stay tuned for more details. Now with that, I would like to go ahead and take a look at some of the questions that have been asked so far. So we'll do a little Q&A. And we'll start that by, the first one is the great question. Are there any new Visual Force components specific to Chatter? John?
So in the first release there aren't. So in the first release, really, it's just the API that you get to use. But they're definitely on the roadmap and things that we're looking to provide Visual Force components around the various different feeds, as well as things like the followers and following components.
Excellent. Of course, in the meantime, you can go ahead and create your own Visual Force components, right? Let's see. How will Chatter use and development apply to those with the non-profit package? So I'll go ahead and take that one. Well, there's a ton of potential here. I mean, we have volunteering organizations that will definitely benefit from Chatter. This is really a way to get information about your data in real time. So any application within the platform that you apply the Chatter concepts to is definitely going to benefit. If you want to clarify your question a little bit more, feel free to do so on the Chatter discussion boards, and we'll get you a very specific answer.
Yep. So I see we have a question there around moderation and how can people moderate the various different feeds. So if you have, if there's a post that you want to get rid of, obviously if you've made the post, if you've made a top-level status update or made a comment, you have the ability to delete it yourself. The owner of the parent record, whether that's the user record or a standard object record or custom object record, the owner of that record has the ability to delete comments and posts made on those user feeds and record feeds. And then administrators with modifiable data also have the ability to delete posts and comments.
Yeah, one thing too that's I think worth repeating is that all of the concepts that apply to your data today, to your non-Chatter data, apply to Chatter. So that means your administrator still has ability to view all of this data and to manage this data.
Yep, and just to reiterate as well on the security side, the security model that you've implemented for Salesforce will apply to your Chatter data as well. So, for example, if you'd set up field-level security around a particular field which you were tracking in Chatter, only users with access to see that field would be able to see the resulting updates in the record feed.
So there's a question here about, is Chatter available only to Salesforce users within the company?
Yeah, so for the first release, we focused on the internal collaboration use case. So it is limited to standard users within your organization. We want to expand that in the future. We've got some ideas for cross-company collaboration, and also we want to expand it to support portal users, but that won't be there in the first release of the product.
Okay. The question here is, are chats posted into the record stream also posted to the org level feed, which I believe they're meaning to say like your news feed?
Yeah, your news feed is really generated when you actually view it, and it's an intersection of the feed items themselves and the list of users and records that you are following.
Okay. Question is, when will this feature be available for Developer Edition, and will it be enabled for existing DE orgs? So I think I can take most of that. This feature will be available for Developer Edition today if you are attending this webinar. So you're going to get a new login to a new Developer Edition with Chatter enabled. For existing Developer Edition orgs, that won't be available until the product goes GA sometime in 2010. Are updates limited by which fields are tracked? I'm not sure what that question means. So let me just provide a little information about limits and fields and that kind of thing. I think John mentioned that you can select up to 20 fields on an object to track the changes on. The updates aren't limited in any kind of way. In other words, if you're following every one of your 4,000 account records, you will get updates for all of the appropriate changes that are made on those records.
That's correct, with the exception of the fact that in the first release, you're only able to follow up to 500 records.
Oh, well, there you go. So there's one interesting limit. Excellent. Let's see. Is Chatter available for users and contacts within Salesforce? It's available for users. It's not available for contacts because that would require it to be available for Customer Portal, and that's not enabled, at least in the initial release. Correct?
Yes.
Here's a good question for you, John. Is it possible to post questions to specific users or groups? If so, how are they notified?
So, the answer to the users part of that question is yes. So, if you wanted to post a question to a specific user today, you could do that by navigating to their user profile page and posting an update directly on their user feed. In the first release, there's no ability to do private messaging. So it would be, while it's directed to that user and they would receive notification, they'd most likely receive an email notification if they hadn't changed the defaults there because you've posted something to their feed. And they'd also see it in their news feed. But it would be visible to any other user who went and took a look at their user profile page. Private messaging is something that we do have on the roadmap. In terms of groups, so the groups are not included in the first release of the product. They're on the near-term roadmap. Definitely something that we want to provide you guys with is the ability to create these kind of ad hoc collaborative groups, within Chatter. But for now, it's limited to users and records, and I think that the records get you actually quite a bit of the way there because those are effectively natural groupings of people within the system. For example, you've got a natural sales team who's working on a particular opportunity, or support team who's working on a particular case.
Excellent. Well, here's kind of a similar or related question, yet a little bit different. If I follow a user, do I also follow all object changes they make, or are the two independent? In other words, if I follow Joe, do I see all changes Joe makes to opportunities?
Good question. So if you're following Joe, you actually only, in your news feed, you will only get the status updates that he posts to his user profile. We felt that if you were, if following Joe meant that you got notified of every single change that Joe made throughout the system, you'd pretty soon stop following Joe. so the decision was made to focus just on the more conversational elements, the actual status updates that he was posting to his feed.
All right. Here's a question: can you set up workflow rules that update feeds under specified conditions?
So not currently, but you could get some of the way they're using triggers.
Yeah, I think that it's helpful to, when you're thinking about this kind of workflow, to understand that chatter configuration is itself a trigger, right? So when I change the amount on my opportunity, that triggers a status update. So if I had a workflow rule that modified a value on the opportunity, changing that opportunity value, would that trigger the update?
Yeah, that would trigger an update in the record feed, yeah.
Okay. Oh, look at that. Okay, so the question is, can this be enabled by profile? So at what level are we enabling chatter and enabling the users to use chatter?
So at the moment, the enabling chatter is an org-wide setting. So when you enable chatter for your org, every single user is going to get a user profile page, and they get access to the people tab, the ability to find and follow other people, the ability to post status updates and post messages on other users' walls. Obviously, as an administrator, you get to control which objects have feeds enabled on them, which standard objects have feeds, and which custom objects have feeds. And then the security model of Salesforce determines which of those records users actually have access to. So even though it's an org-wide setting, the amount of functionality that it gets users out of the box is just limited to the user profile page and being able to find and follow other users.
Here's a good question, and one that I'm surprised I haven't heard before. Can a record follow me?
A record cannot follow you. It's an interesting notion, though.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Let's see. Are there search capabilities for chatter? In other words, if I want to find all feeds with a search term in it, could I search all chatter for matches?
So not at the moment. We don't have search exposed through the UI at the moment, and it's something that we're actively working on.
So you would have to use some kind of SOCL way of doing it rather than a SOCL.
Exactly.
S-object query language rather than the search language. Okay. Let's try. Are chatter objects available in reports?
They're not available in reports in the first release.
Yeah, but you certainly could write your own kind of reporting with the by accessing the data model to a degree.
Exactly. So we've been pulling out some stats internally, just writing queries.
Okay. One more question. Are parent ID or subscriber ID universal lookup fields? That's kind of a tough one. I've never heard that term before. So parent ID and subscriber ID. Subscriber ID is always a user, right? This is what prevents accounts from following us. Parent ID, on the other hand, is the polymorphic relationship key that can point to any of these other data types. But as far as a lookup field is concerned, if you were to render, say, in a Visualforce page, an input field for the parent ID, the question is, would you get a lookup widget that would allow you to pick the appropriate type? And I think the answer to that is no, but it's certainly something we can look into deeper. Now, the questions that we didn't answer today will be available later on, either today or tomorrow or the next day, depending on how long it takes us to answer your questions. on developer.force.com. So if you submitted a question and we didn't answer it, look for the answer in the fact that we will be generating. And with that, I would like to welcome everybody to the Chatter Dev Zone and look forward to seeing you all inside of Chatter. Thank you very much.